Welcome to the Church Safety Guys broadcast with hosts James McGarvey, Paul Buckner, and Mike Scully. Together, they make up the Church Safety Guys. Their mission? To equip, train, and disciple church safety teams. Join us for the next hour as we talk about all things church safety and security. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, join one of our church safety and security communities online, and share this broadcast with your church.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Sunday night evening broadcast of the Church Safety Guys. I am James, and tonight I'm joined by my co-host, none other than Texan local Mike Scully.
Hey guys, gals, everybody, good evening. How are you, James?
I'm good. It's been a crazy busy week, and it's starting to wind down, and I'm actually looking forward to going back to work tomorrow.
I believe it. A little burning the midnight oil at church there, I heard.
Whew. Yeah. So if you're just joining us, welcome. We're going to talk tonight about communicating with your team and some of the great things with that. But if you're listening to us on YouTube or a podcast, be sure to subscribe and like our channel for us. And then if you are listening on YouTube or watching it at a later time, click the subscribe button on the lower right-hand corner. And that helps us out with content as well. So if you're new to us and listening, usually what we also say is go ahead and post your location where you're listening from in the comments, and also your church name, church you're affiliated with, and that helps us as well. So yeah, a lot of crazy stuff going on this week for me. And in the news, I actually just pulled up one of the folks in the group sent me an article from, I think it's NBC, on I guess there was an armed gunman that went into a church in New York today and started shooting. And it looks like it was about 3:45 this afternoon. He went in, and there was already two officers there, and they engaged in basically shooting with him. And I guess later he was struck in the head, and later he died at the hospital. But what's interesting about it is that I guess thankfully the officers were there. It'll be interesting to kind of watch in the next week or so to see what comes out of it, because I'm actually kind of scanning over it now, but the news article actually says that he had two firearms, rope, knives, plural, and a gas can with him. So I don't know. They said he wasn't intentionally shooting at a person, that he was just shooting up into the air. And so no one except the gunman, thankfully, was injured. And they haven't released his name or anything like that. But apparently the officers engaged with him, and then he ran outside where it ended abruptly. So definitely thankful in that case it ended abruptly, and that it didn't, because apparently it was a full cathedral. They were doing a Christmas program. But
having officers on scene or immediately nearby to be able to rapidly engage the threat, obviously that they teach that, but
sure,
we're not always blessed to have that at each of our churches. So could have been a lot worse.
It could have been, for sure. So yeah, this week we both kind of had interesting situations dealing with homeless folks in our church. Mm-hmm. So I'll throw it over to you, and you can go through your story, because I haven't heard all of that.
Mine's minor in comparison. We had a gentleman who's kind of come in every once in a while, and the team is engaged with him and had conversations, and different folks at church have as well. And we have tried to bless him with some cash at one point. and there's different schools of thought over you do or you don't in that circumstance. But for whatever reason, it was a little chillier from an Austin, Texas perspective this morning. But at the same point, he didn't really want to leave, it seemed like. And despite the multiple attempts to kind of say, hey, it's time to go, we didn't have to go hands on, but we did have to get a little bit more vocal and forceful.
Sure.
And with a second member of the team to kind of say, all right, it's time to go. We have to lock up the building. And so it by no means a threat, but it just was, for whatever reason, he was being belligerent and not just leaving. So it did take a little bit more action. So probably very dull in comparison to your late night episode.
Well, dull is starting to look really appealing to me. And I'm truly getting to the point where if we have a quiet Sunday, it feels like a blessing. Because the last couple of Sundays have been pretty crazy. But yeah, we had I had a Friday night. I had an alarm go off, and I was eating dinner with my family, and I'm able to remotely look at what's going on in our church building. And so I pulled it up, and I saw the profile of someone, and I thought the person looked familiar, so I text one of our pastors, and I thought, hey, is this a maintenance guy? Was there a maintenance guy in the church tonight? And the pastor was like, yeah, I think he was going to swing by. Okay, no worries. And then about 2 hours later, one of the staff members, one of our creative director, was there setting up stuff for Sunday, and he went into one of the rooms that we have, a sound booth behind our baptistry, and turned the lights on, and a guy jumped up and said, "What are you doing here?" And the staff member was like, "I'm supposed to be here. What are you doing here?" And so the guy was kind of aggressive, and they went back and forth. And so the staff member said, "Hey, I'm going to go give my friend James a call." And the guy was like, I need a ride home. And so the staff member was like, "I'm going to go give my buddy James a call, and maybe he can come give us a hand here." And so the guy was like, all right. So he goes and he calls me, and I drive over there. And as I'm driving, of course, I dial 911 and get a dispatcher, and I'm like talking to the dispatcher, and they said, who are you? What are you driving? And I said, I told them my position, and I said, I'm on my way. If you could have an officer meet me, because this man sounds combative, and he did break into the building. And they said, okay, yeah, we'll have an officer as soon as possible. So I got there, and you know what? It's so funny because I stepped in and I started talking to him, and I think it's the first time that I've consciously been aware of, like, my body, how, where my hands are, how I'm holding myself, how I'm carrying myself. And it really was just a moment of de-escalation. Like, I'm talking to the guy, and I'm just like, hey man, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I need a ride home. And I said, well, it's 1 a.m. And I said, we don't have a way to give you a ride home. Do you have, can we call you a taxi? Can we call you an Uber? And so I know, I'm not sure if he's watching tonight, but sometimes John Riley with General Response, he'll join us and he'll watch the show. And I'm standing there talking to this guy, and all I could think of is John would be so proud of me. So he's sitting there and he's fidgeting and whatnot. And so I asked him, I said, sir, do you have an ID on you? Can I see? Because it wasn't coherent sentences. It was all over the place. And so he said, no, I don't have my ID. And I said, well, I need you to do me a favor. And he's like, what's that? And I said, I need you to keep your hands out of your pockets for me. Just pull them out. And he's like, okay, I'll do that. And I said, okay. So I started talking to him a little bit more, and then the first officer showed up. And so kind of explained to them what was going on, and they did a fantastic job. They went and they were able to locate his dad, who came and picked him up. And It was pretty interesting. His dad was like, I guess, an attorney, and was concerned that we were going to press charges, and really kind of got in my face about the guy. And I said, I said, with his dad and the officer standing there, I said, nothing was damaged. I said, he kind of, he took some clothes that were giveaway clothes that we have. I said, nothing was damaged though, and I'm not going to press charges. I just don't want him coming back on the property. So we'll trespass him, but that's going to be it. Yeah. And so when I said that, his dad was like, oh, okay. Like, it completely blew him away that, like, he was ready to fight me.
Prepared for a fight.
Yeah, that I would say we're going to press charges. And so later, one of the first officer on the scene came up to me, and she's like, are you sure you don't want to press charges on this guy? He did break into your building. And I said, well, nothing, again, nothing was damaged. And for someone breaking into the building, it probably, outside of consuming time, it was probably the easiest easiest thing to handle. So it created quite a bit of discussion. Hey, how can we do this different? Can we do this better? What are our policies for someone being here at night when something like this happens? But
when you're not there with your team, so I mean, it's a totally different scenario. Arriving on scene and somebody's already there, and I mean, certainly, a lot more chaotic than my week. But well, here we are tonight. Tonight we're talking about communications.
Yep. Excellent. Yeah. So let me go ahead and bring in our guest tonight, and he is actually with the Two-Way Radio Center, and I'll pull him in. All right, Billy, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are y'all?
Good.
Doing well. So tonight we want to talk a little bit about obviously communicating with your team and some tools that are available for that. And Mike, did you want to kind of go through your thoughts for communication?
Yeah, I think if we look at communication as a whole and we want to break that down, what does that look like? So we talk, how do you talk to your team? How do you talk with your team? How are you talking to other teams perhaps within the church? How do you talk to the public? And how do you talk to the press? So on previous episodes, we've certainly talked about ways that you handle the press, how you deal with the public where you have to address them, or a crowd that may come onto the property. We've addressed that as well. So I think there's a great opportunity to kind of double click, if you will, into how do we communicate with our teams during an event on a Sunday morning, things like that. And what methods do we have? What equipment do we have? And why? And what we need to do and what makes it more effective. So Billy, why don't you take a chance to introduce yourself and again, who you're with and a little bit more about the background there, and then we'll dive into the topic a bit more.
Sure. So my name is Billy Dobbenmeyer. I've been selling walkie-talkies for about 20 years. So I'm a walkie-talkie guy. And so it's pretty much all I've done. I sold toilets, and then I started selling walkie-talkies. So that's my career. And so if you look at our website, you'll see that we're pretty product agnostic. We do a lot of business in the church market. We help small churches. We help large churches. We're believers. We're a Christian-owned company, and our goal is to get churches to use two-way radios because it's a good safety tool, and it's a good tool to improve the overall ministry of your church. And so we really don't care what you use. We just want you to start using something because it's an important tool.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. So do you? I know, like we were talking a little bit beforehand, I know you get asked a lot about safety teams, but what are some of the ministries in the church that you guys usually recommend that it can be helpful for?
Sure. So safety first, obviously, parking, audiovisual, sometimes guest services, just getting people seated, taking care of things of that nature. And then definitely the children. Children's ministry, churches are a must in the children's ministry.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And I think it's something that we do in our church as well. I mean, we have multiple channels that we have our teams on. Security is on its main channel. We have what we call pastor support. It's kind of a staff support person to try to reduce the number of questions that go to pastor on a Sunday morning. So there's a few folks that are on that team that act kind of as liaisons. Worst case, they escalate, but they're kind of that middle person, that team that collects all of the traffic. So any of those teams, whether it's children's, parking, safety, they can switch over channel and speak to that team and say, hey, you know what, I'm out of pens, or the men's room needs this, or whatever it might be. But also any team that needs to get in touch with the safety team can go through them, and that pastor support team then can reach our safety team, and we deploy.
Mm-hmm. So I'll have to recommend, if you have enough channels, that there are 2 channels for the safety team. There's one channel for the other ministries to call in and say, hey, I need help. And then there's a channel for the safety team to talk in case there's a situation. Because when there's a situation, you don't want everybody, right? You don't want everybody talking. You just want your key people in that. Correct.
And we've isolated it because of the limit of number of channels that we had with what we have now. We looked at it from a perspective of same thing. We didn't want everybody on our channel, so we treat our primary safety channel as kind of more of a TAC channel. So it is more of our active conversations amongst safety team.
Yeah, we do this. We do a very similar thing. We have radios in our kids department and first impressions, and really any ministry that we feel would be beneficial to communicate with safety. Safety is has kind of been the foundation of communication. So actually what we do is everything that's a major ministry has a different channel. And so we have an individual that is in what we call our safety office, and they listen to everything. Like they have a scanner, they pick up all the frequencies and channels and a radio, and then everything kind of goes through them. And so then what they do, if it's a children's department situation, they're listening. The children's department person can call them and say, hey, this is what's going on, this is what we need. And then at that point they can call our first impressions team, or they can call safety and say, hey, this is what's going on, can you guys respond? And originally, I think initially we had we used radios, and we had like 1 or 2 channels, and what we were just finding was there were too many people that shouldn't have radios. But beyond that, maybe people that didn't really know how to use them correctly, I should say. And so we had to kind of coach them through some of that. But realistically, what we were finding is a lot of times we would be like, if Mike and I were talking on the radio, someone else would flip over to our channel, and we found a lot of folks in the church, they would listen to our conversations and they knew that it was safety and security. So if they saw us move quickly across the church or something like that, then they'd flip over and start listening. And then we had a couple of times where they put in, like they would comment into, and we're like, who just spoke? Who said that? What's going on? So yeah, from that standpoint, when that started happening, we were like, okay, we're going to funnel this through to an office dispatcher, and then at that point they can call us and tell us, because we recognize the voice and we know what they're saying directly, and they can kind of filter it out, just like a 911 dispatcher, for the sake of communication and clarity, and so that helps us out a lot. But
so one thing to consider there is you may be able to, so at my church, our children's ministry, they might have 25 radios. 20 of those radios can only talk on the children's ministry. Then the leads are able to talk to security. And so most any radio that's out there, you can program, say it's a 6-channel radio, you can program it down to be a 1 or a 2-channel radio very simply, to help eliminate some of that crosstalk, and to keep people from listening that you don't want listening or commenting.
Yeah, sometimes that's a good a good thing, and we like to be more discreet with what we're doing and who has ears and who's listening. So it's been an interesting situation. When we first started, we actually just used regular CB radios that we bought at Walmart, and it was pretty cool. But kind of a quick funny story with that, we would set them up like in the classrooms and stuff, and what I started finding was that there were more and more truckers in our area that were using them and having conversations that were less than appropriate for church audiences. And so I remember one Wednesday night I went to pick up, collect the radios and put them away. And one of the sweet nursery workers was like, "I heard you talking on the radio." And I'm like, "I didn't say a word." And then the next time we put him out, some trucker got on there and he was like, it was like every other word he was dropping cuss words. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to change this now.
Or, of course, you end up with the folks that, they have a hot mic and they're taking a restroom break on the radio, or you get the ones that you got to teach the etiquette in addition to, all right, here's how you handle the equipment, here's the purpose behind it, but here's the etiquette to it as well. I mean, I know we could go back and forth over different churches that some use codes, some don't use codes. Some have realized codes have gotten too complicated, their turnover is too much, therefore codes are too confusing. Others try to speak plainly and basic so that you can enunciate and then identify what people are saying on the air. I think that's important. But Billy, a question for you then. Why don't you kind of lay out the progression of, here's a church, they have no walkie-talkies, where do they go to get started? What does that look like? What do you recommend? And then walk through that progression as they grow, that sort of maturity into something more, and what might that look like?
Sure. So if a small church have never used radios before, Midland makes an 8-pack of walkie-talkies. That's $309. It's an affordable set, comes with everything they need, headsets, and so it gives them 8 radios. And we recommend that they put 2 of them out with the parking guys, 2 of them with their AV guys, 2 of them with security, and 2 of them in the children's ministry. And they start there. And that's a good foundation. You've got radios in the most important places in the building that they can communicate. And so they limit it there. As they get larger, so a church has got 500, 700, 1,000 members, they can start looking at, there's affordable digital radios today that will allow for one-to-one communication. So I can talk to you, Mike, privately if I want to talk to you, Mike. I can have a group that would just include the 3 of us. And so then, and we can monitor other channels, but we have a channel where we're just talking to each other that nobody can even monitor and listen to. And so then it becomes that's kind of the holy grail in the walkie-talkie is that I can talk privately. It's going to cover the property. Then the only other consideration is how big the building is. And so, if it's a large Baptist church that's over multiple buildings in a downtown of a large community, the radio that they're going to need to work is very different than the radio that a church that's moved into an old Walmart store is going to need. And so, before you buy radios, it doesn't ever hurt to, you see our website up on the screen. It doesn't ever hurt to just call us and ask us, because our goal is we want you to use radios, whether you buy them from us or somebody. It's important for your ministry, but we give free advice all the time. I'll look at your building on Google and I'll tell you exactly what you can look for, and then what's the right radio at the right price point to get you there.
That's great. You mentioned Walmart. I think one of the things that jumps out at me right off the bat is what sort of interference that they might be dealing with different building structures, not even in one building, based on how they're wired and the different structures and things like that. So I'm assuming you work with certain groups with repeaters and other sorts of things then as well, or set up places within a campus. Perhaps for somebody like James, we're self-contained in essentially what was an old movie theater. So while we're spread out and have multiple rooms and pretty thick walls in many spots, there are areas that we don't have as strong a signal, but then there's areas where we can walk clear across the other end of the parking lot and catch somebody from inside, no problem. So I think that's something I'm sure you deal with as well.
That is, and so, and that's, very rarely do we recommend a church get a repeater unless it's a large church that's got multiple, it's got a large campus. Outside of that, we can normally find a radio that's going to work. And so the more rooms you have within a building, digital radios work better than analog radios. The radios you buy at Walmart are not going to give you good range at all. And so, theoretically, the more you spend on the radio, the better the range is going to be on the radio, but that's not necessarily always true. Radios come in different wattages. They'll come in from a half a watt up to 5 watts. 5 watts would be most powerful. That's how we get the most range with just using a handheld radio, is by getting a more powerful unit.
And that's all without crossing a threshold into licensure and other sorts of things, correct?
Yeah. So when it comes to FCC licenses, business radios is the first category that we would say has to have an FCC license. There's it's an interesting situation. So if I've got a Motorola radio here, okay? So this Motorola radio requires an FCC license. This Motorola radio has 56 frequencies inside of it. If you tried to license this radio, the FCC would not allow you to license any of the 56 frequencies within that radio. And so it's type accepted by the FCC. So if we were to take the battery off, there's a sticker in the back of it that says this radio is designed for businesses to use and it's been approved by the FCC to do that. But if you go to get a license for it, it says on the box and in the owner's manual to get a license, is when you go to the FCC would say there's no licenses available for that product. And so they do that so that the manufacturers will make radios that fit the requirements that they want, the type acceptance requirements, so that you're not talking to the police department, the fire department, folks like that. And they're not ever going to come and talk to you about why you're using that radio without a license. If we put a repeater in the building, then that's when they're going to absolutely want a license. But if we're just using walkie-talkies without, they're not going to give us any trouble.
I want to circle back around a tiny bit to the picking something out for your campus, because I know, like Mike mentioned, his church versus mine. Mine is about 130,000 square feet, and we're in one of those independent Baptist church buildings where every 30 years we added on, another section. And what we found initially, we kind of learned the hard way, because my progression with it was we tried apps on your phone, and then what we were finding was that it just wasn't fast enough with where we are with the digital service. And there was a lot of hiccups between carriers. Like, I have AT&T, but one of my assistant directors has Sprint, and he doesn't have good coverage at our building. So if I went to message him or text him, it was like he would get the message like 10 minutes, 20 minutes later. And I'm like, okay, I can't depend on this to talk to you now when I need you now. And so we kind of shifted and went back to the radios. But what we found was, in our building, because there was a lot of steel, there's a lot of concrete. The concrete that they used, they actually originally, this tells you how old it is, they originally ran chicken wire through it.
Okay.
As they were making it. And so what we were finding is that we really just needed something more industrial that could really cut through that stuff. And the other big thing for us at that point was not that we wanted to talk to people like in a vehicle leaving the campus, but our campus is so large and we have outbuildings where we'll set up ministry events. We wanted to be able to actually talk all the way across the property, regardless of, where you are, what you're doing. You can communicate with somebody else. And, for us, we actually, and I wish I had found you guys sooner, honestly, because we did end up going through a different company, but we ended up going with an analog digital radio that offered both. And eventually our plan as the church continues to grow is to switch over to digital And because what we found as well, and maybe you can kind of throw some thoughts out there on this, but what we found as well is a lot of the analog frequencies are consistent with like microphones and electronic equipment in a very close range. And so what we were finding is a microphone that somebody uses on the stage could only be a couple numbers off from what we're actually using in a handheld, and it would just create, either interference or, something else where we were like, okay, we gotta look at this and adjust this, because I don't want to be keying my mic and all of a sudden somebody get feedback in a monitor, or somebody singing, and we were just too old school. Now, I mean, stuff has been updated, but yeah. So,
all right. So James, you're showing your age with that comment.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So there's a couple things when it comes to apps. All right. The reason a church security team shouldn't use the apps is because if there's a situation on your campus or around your campus where it's imperative for your security team to talk, everybody's going to be on their cell phones, and those apps become less and less. It's less successful to get the applications to work the way they're supposed to, the more traffic there is. And so we don't ever recommend somebody use the app simply for that reason. If there's an emergency, it's hard to use your telephone because there's so many people trying to use your phones. Two-way radios allow you to communicate instantly. And when I say instantly, it's going to be somewhere between 0.2 of a second after you press the talk button on a good radio up to about 0.4 seconds on a bad radio. So you're always going to be good there. Second thing is that a church should always use UHF radios or digital. So Motorola has a radio that operates in the 900 megahertz frequency range. So either UHF in the 450 range, or 450 going up to like 480, or digital up in the 900 range. Only place a church should be using radios. Then when it comes to multiple buildings, radios come from 1 watt up to 5 watts. UHF, most of the time, 4 watts is the most powerful we're going to get. There's a couple manufacturers that are doing 5, but by and large, it's 4. If a church has more than 3 buildings, they should be looking at a 4-watt radio. Then when it comes to analog to digital, the reason there's a number of radios today that do both. All right, so it has the capability to talk in analog, has the capability to talk in digital, just like TV did 10 years ago. If you think about when there were certain digital TV channels coming out, you're still seeing that in your car stereo too. There's HD channels and then there's regular channels. If you've got radios that do both, I would put my security team on a digital channel, and I would let everybody else use analog until you can afford to move everybody over to digital. What happens with digital is we have, you don't get any outside interference at all. Most of the time you have the ability to do one-to-one, so I can talk to one person or I can talk to many people. You get better battery life, and then you get no background noise. So say there's an incident on campus and the fire department's there, and so they like to pull in, they like to leave their sirens on for a minute or two. If we're on an analog radio and we're talking, all you're going to hear is that siren. With the digital radio, it blocks that siren out completely. So that's a cool feature. And then when it comes with interference of the rest of the equipment that you have. So back in 10 years ago, there could be conflict between the walkie-talkie and the headsets that are being used, the AV headsets that are used in a church. But the FCC's tightened that up and put more space. So we should not have interference on newer equipment between walkie-talkies and anything else that's being used in the church, even computer monitors. Because there was a day, if I was sitting here and I pressed the push to talk button on this radio, it would cause my computer to do all kinds of wonky things. That's all been cleared up.
Great.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go. We appreciate you listening. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break and thank some of our sponsors. And then when we come back, we will talk a little bit more about radio equipment. So stay with us and we'll be right back.
With over 50 years of experience with religious and nonprofit organizations, Thomas Alexander Insurance & Associates understands that your congregation is different from a traditional business. We're here to fulfill your needs. coming to you while creating a personal plan for your budget and size. From your local community to around the globe, we are advocates for you. Thomas Alexander Insurance and Associates, your partner in service.
Even at church, bad things can happen. Medical emergencies, active shooters, predators, even domestic disputes. Is your church, is your ministry, is your sanctuary prepared? Do you have a safety or security team? Find out how you can be with James McGarvey's new book, The Case for Church Safety and Security. James McGarvey's experience and training, along with a biblical foundation, bring much needed information in today's trying times. It offers a true biblical perspective for starting, keeping, and growing a safety or security ministry in your church or place of worship. The Case for Church Safety and Security, a brand new book, includes a special foreword by Frank Pomeroy, the pastor at the First Baptist Church, Sutherland Springs, Texas, where they experienced the worst active shooter in U.S. history. This compelling book shares insight on preparing yourself and your church from potential threats with a biblical worldview. Start your journey to a more secure ministry and worship freely, knowing you're safe. Get more information now at churchsafetyguys.com and pick up your copy today.
The Church Safety Guys is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping equip, train, and disciple church safety and security teams. We are about all things church safety and security, which starts with a ministry mindset and a servant's heart. We are protectors, guardians, ambassadors, and shepherds. We help church and place of worship safety and security teams all over the United States through our broadcasts, online communities, conferences, trainings, resources, and products. Help us reach more churches in impactful ways by considering becoming a monthly ministry partner. $2, $5, $20 a month will help us continue to provide these resources.
All right, so welcome back. You're listening to the Church Safety Guys Sunday night broadcast, and just had to take a quick sponsor break. So we're back with you, and we're talking with Billy with Two-Way Radio Center, and he graciously decided to join us tonight, and they are one of the Christian businesses that we're partnering with, and so when you check them out and go to their website, I believe the code, let me pull it up here. If you use the code Safety Guys, sorry, here's the card. You can actually receive 10% off of your purchase, and then a portion of that purchase actually comes back to our nonprofit to help us support churches with equip training and discipling them. So it was really great. We appreciate their partnership with us, and you definitely need to check out their website, because I have it up on my other screen here, and I'm kind of I did post the link to that Midland set that you were talking about earlier, because it's actually on sale, and that's a fantastic price. And it's actually for the equipment that comes with it and everything, it's actually cheaper than Amazon from what I've seen and that sort of thing. So definitely check these guys out. They're very competitive in pricing, and even like Billy mentioned before, even if you just have a question about your property, you reach out to them, and they've graciously been willing to chat with you about your special situation. And it seems like every church is just a tiny bit different with how they build it, with how they do everything. So I think sometimes, one of the things I want to throw out here and just kind of see what you think, Billy, is, but I know a lot of times people will say, well, I don't need a fancy radio. I'm just going to go buy one of those Baofeng or generic brand radios, and I can save some money. And to somebody that was thinking that with that mentality, like, what would you have as far as thoughts for them on that?
Sure. So the two brands that we hear all the time are Baofeng and Retivas.
Sure.
those are the two cheapies that are out there. And so the reason I don't sell them is because I've been doing this a long time. We want to put a radio in your hand that's going to work like it's supposed to, that's going to survive you dropping it. And then if that happens, that we're either going to be able to replace it without any question, or we're going to be able to get it fixed quickly. And so both of those brands, you have to send the product back to China to get it fixed. And so, whatever you saved, if you break it, you're either throwing it in the trash, or you're going to be waiting a long time before you have your radio back. So, the big manufacturers in the United States, they all mil-spec their radios. So all of them are guaranteed to withstand a 5-foot drop on concrete. They're water resistant, so you can get them wet. They're dust proof. And then the FCC has type accepted them to say that they're safe for use. Both Baofeng and Retivas are not type accepted in the United States. But the FCC's not done anything to keep them from selling radios.
I think originally, when we first started, and I'm just going to be honest and transparent here, so you can still send all hate mail to Paul Buckner. He's not with us tonight, but it's okay. Starting off, I mean, we as a church, we use Baofeng, and what I found was it was just very inconsistent with across our campus. Now our campus is larger, but again, when I approached our board or trustees board, I had asked. I got to the point where I was, and I'm just being honest and transparent, I was so frustrated with the amount of money that we were spending on, because if somebody dropped it, it was done, and then I've got to go buy another one, and then I was handing them out to folks directing traffic at an event, and somebody drove over one with their car because they dropped it and forgot it and everything. So they're very inexpensive, and I can see how that would draw some people in to say, you know what, it's a good deal. It's on Amazon, it's on eBay, whatever. But the reality is, for a church like us, when we were trying to get into this, what we found was that when I started recording it, I was actually spending more money buying that stuff and buying the headsets and buying everything else than if I had actually taken that same amount of money and invested it into a Midland or a name brand radio and contacted somebody and said, look, find the best thing for me. And I wish now, and again, it's Paul says this all the time, but it's like, I wish I knew now what I knew back then, because then I could have said, hey, go, find a company like you guys that can kind of help walk me through this, so that I can see, an investment now of, $300-400 pays dividends, and the equipment's solid, and there's warranties on it, and it's well built equipment. So, you don't have to worry about someone accidentally dropping it. We have a pond on our property, kind of a retention pond, and they built it into like a decoration with a fountain type thing. And yes, we've had radios somehow end up going in there.
Sure. Yes. So they go swimming, right? So people take them swimming. They do get run over by cars. I can show you radios that have been through fires, and Motorola replaced them. So the major manufacturers in the United States are Motorola and Kenwood are the two largest. They pride themselves in how indestructible their radios are. And they use the same technology in a radio that costs $150 as one that costs $1,500. It goes through the same quality testing. And so we don't have to break the bank to get you a radio that's going to work and is going to last and is going to survive. They're out there. And even the headsets, right? So the headsets, if you break the headset, they're warranted for a year. So you're either going to, you pay now or you pay later. Buying a quality product is definitely going to, it's going to last you 4 or 5 years versus having to buy a new one every time somebody breaks it. So somebody put a comment up about first responder radios.
Sure.
Not working. And I wanted to touch on that real quick because that's something that can be very expensive.
Sure.
And so here in the United States, especially after 9/11, what happened on 9/11 is you had all of these, you had first responders that couldn't talk to each other. And so a lot of money was spent nationally to put a radio system out that all the first responders could talk to. They could, so in a matter of minutes, a police department from Florida can be in New York City. They can press a button on a computer and all of those radios will talk, right? So that's way, way more than what we would need in a church environment. And so sometimes when first responders come into our buildings, they're going to say, hey, my radio doesn't work in the inside here. And so there is a product that you can buy that makes that work. It's called a BDA. And BDAs tend to run somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000. We recommend that you encourage the police officers to use your radios while they're in your building. Mm-hmm. And then if there's a situation that they work to get outside the building so that the radios will work. Because unless you're in so we see BDAs being sold in, being installed in manufacturing facilities that are 600,000 and 700,000 square feet and bigger. You might see a BDA being used in a church that's in a downtown that's, 300,000 or 400,000 square feet with something in the basement. You can have a fire marshal come in and ask for that. But the way the fire code is written, it's not supposed to hit nonprofits like it's supposed to hit manufacturing. And so if you ask them to use your radios and then they can go outside if they have to, when they want to talk on theirs, that's a much less expensive solution than going the BDA route, because BDAs are very, very expensive. And the only benefit that you will have from it is that if a first responder is in the basement of your building, they can talk.
Mm-hmm. In this, and just to kind of put some context on that, and then I'll throw it over to Mike real quick. Excuse me. The gentleman that posted that, actually, Wes Peterson, is actually the safety director of a church in Minnesota, and he has a very large campus, and I believe that church has 9 campuses. So for an infrastructure from that, that standpoint, they program their radios similar so they can use the same equipment across the board and have that unification. So, a larger church is definitely going to have hopefully definitely have a little bit more budget to kind of address some of those things. But, for us, I never called the fire department out. A lot of the UHF, VHF, frequencies, the FCC, all of that stuff, I just sat down and researched it myself, and I kind of went through it because I didn't know what I didn't know, as Paul would say, and I didn't know, there was, at that point, I didn't have any connections with anybody to actually sit down and talk with them. I tried to sit down a couple of times with some local dealers, and it was like, okay, all you want is Motorola, and it's like, $500 a radio. Here you go. This is the best. This is what you want. And I'm like, wait a second. We're a church. We don't mind investing in something that's going to last a while. But, if I can do the same thing with a $150 radio that I can with a $500 radio, to me, that's just being a better steward of what the resources that we have. And maybe I can use the difference for something else. So
So what I would say to that is that it's important for the church to have radios. It's not important for the church to have the best radio that you can buy, right? So if you were to call us and say, "Hey, I'm looking for the best radio for my church," right? So the gentleman who's posted this about having the fire department and the police department asking for a BDA, the needs on that church are far different than the needs of a church
Sure.
that's in an old Walmart. And so we're going to find out where they are, what they're trying to do, and then we're going to try to sell them the best radio at the price point that works for them. And that may be that Midland set that's $309. We want you having radios because radios are a safety tool, and radios are going to benefit your ministry. Doesn't matter, and they all do the same thing. That you push the button to talk and you go to listen. That's the gist of all of them.
Sure. Mike, you were going to say something?
Yeah, a couple quick points. I think we've kind of covered some of the stuff that I was going to say, but it's kind of great in the making that case. In other words, pun intended. We saw at the break this guy's new book out here making the case. So I think we're all learning how do we make the case for radios if you don't have them. And if you do, how many of you are having these conversations? We know it's occurring in the group all the time over equipment. And this is better than that, and that's better than this. Well, you know what? There's an opportunity to have those conversations about radios as well. We just did a little bit with the Baofeng versus some of the others, but I think there's a case to be made for not only having a radio, and Billy, you spoke to that, but I think having a better radio based on your situation. And to that point, it's having the right radio for your situation. So I think that's important. But I think for those of us that are leaders in our church, it's good to have those conversations. We should be assessing what do we have now, and is it adequate? And if it's not, when is it on the roadmap for possibly upgrading? And perhaps give Billy a call and say, you know what, this is what we're working with. This is what we're experiencing. What's our next step? In other words, start to plan that out. We're about to cross out of the dumpster fire that is 2020 into 2021, and hopefully it's better. But at the same point, start to have a plan. So maybe make a New Year's resolution to give Billy a call and talk about your current situation of radios and where you might go next.
It's definitely a good thing to do. And when we purchased our last set, again, I finally, and that was one of the things that to your point, Mike, that's one of the things that I came to where I finally just sat down and said, okay, I'm not looking at the dollar signs. What is the minimum that we need? What can we grow into? And what can complement our ministry and the ministry growth? And with the projected growth that we had at the church and the addition to safety people, the addition to classrooms, addition to different, events, large scale events and that sort of thing, I was able to map that out, but I was able to go with the information to our oversight pastor, to our board, and say, look, you know what, this is an investment, and that's what you have to look at it. It's a capital item. We're not going to be buying this every year, but I believe that, as the church grows, this is an important thing, and we need to invest the money now so that we can, receive the dividends in the next few years of, smart, sharp communication. And and that's, when I explained it to them, and again, I'm not saying throw some stuff together and take it to him and be like, well, I want the Motorola, because everybody knows Motorola sometimes is kind of like the Cadillac in certain situations. But from a situation of doing your research and kind of planning out, that makes, and because I've done that for boards and trustees and pastors, I'm just saying, if you're in the middle of doing that, that makes it 10 times more invitable and interesting for that board to say, you know what, this person has done their research, they've gone through, they've looked at every angle of this, and okay, yeah, that's a convincing point to say, you know what, here we are, and yes, it's important, and we need to invest in money. And you'd much rather do that now than have a situation down the road that happens because communication was poor, right? And you didn't have the right tools to talk to each other or do something. And then all of a sudden something happened because, something bad happened because you didn't take the time to actually assess your needs and assess the equipment that you had. So just some thoughts on there. And we're almost out of time, but I'll throw it over to Mike, and he can kind of wrap us up here.
Sure. Well, there's just 2 quick comments of things I noticed that are great about the website that I wanted to positively bring up. One is really the university component, a lot of technical stuff that we can't get into the weeds here on the show, but a lot of information about answering specific questions and answering about different technology, and of course picking up the phone and talking to Billy to get some more answers. But I thought that was really great, and I think as a ministry ourselves and trying to help churches who are also in ministry, what really jumped out about, if you look at their site, is a link that says, "Can we pray for you?" And you know what, that really is important and jumped out to me. So we certainly appreciate working with you guys and try to find those that are ministry minded, so that we are helping each other out along this journey of ministry, so that we can reach more people and keep people safe, communicate more effectively, and that's just a good call out. I wanted to make sure that got on here tonight.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again for joining us, and hopefully let us know if we can help you guys out any. But hopefully you start getting a few more phone calls from folks saying that you heard about us, or that they heard about you through us and the broadcast, and we can kind of go from there. But thanks for joining us tonight. Really
Sure.
appreciate it.
Thank you. So Merry Christmas, everybody.
Christmas Eve.
All right. So real quick, I just we'll wrap up. So next, I want to mention next Sunday night, Paul will be back on with us, and it's actually our 50th broadcast episode. So we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff. We'll have books to give away, prizes, cars. Let's see what else. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, we're not going to be giving any cars away. But what's interesting is we're going to be talking about next year a little bit, and we've got some fantastic folks lined up to be guests next year. You definitely don't want to miss it. But next week we got it done a little bit early. We were going to talk a little bit more in depth about the new book that's out there, and you guys have been pretty awesome with receiving that and very gracious with your reviews and your comments. So thank you for that. I think it's kind of funny that it's Amazon. It's on Amazon, and if you're interested in bulk quantity copies, feel free to reach out to us on our website at churchsafetyguys.com. But I got a notification today that it was the top. It actually filled the top 1 and top 2 new release site or place for Amazon church leadership materials. So I was pretty pumped about that. I was pretty excited, and I think out of the top 100 church resources, the last time I looked, it was number 26 on Amazon's list. So that, and again, I'm humbled by that. That certainly wouldn't have happened without you guys going and looking at it and picking up a copy. So as always, thank you very much for your support. We love that. And again, that book, it's not a devotional, but it's a book that I wrote and put together. It's come together over a long period of time, and it's really meant as a resource for churches to be able to have a safety and security discussion with their leadership and let it be biblical. There's no two ways around it. Having a safety and security team is a biblical ministry, and I know there's still a lot of pastors out there and a lot of leadership that feel that it's not necessary. And if you are in that type of situation, this is the type of book, and it's written for a layperson, church leader, whoever. This is the type of book that you want to hand them, and can help you out with that. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Next week we'll have the three of us on, and we'll just be kind of chatting, more fireside, fireplace style, a little bit of FDR here. But anyhow, I appreciate you guys listening and joining tonight. I'm going to actually turn it over to Mike, and he's going to close us in prayer tonight, and then we'll go from there. So,
great. Thanks, James. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity to go before you and before Christians across the country and worship and be able to bring our message to folks at churches and their security teams and talk about the importance of communication. We thank you for the opportunity, and we're blessed to have folks like Billy to come on and be able to share their knowledge with you. And we continue to pray that, Lord, bless us with the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and not just our mouths, but the right things to come out of our mouths, not just to our teams and not just over the air when we're on a radio, but on a daily basis so we can reach folks that are coming through those doors, Lord. Bless the week ahead, Lord Jesus, and we hope that nothing continues to happen with the situation there in New York City as we come to learn more over the course of this week. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, all of our resources are available on churchsafetyguys.com. So if you ever have any questions, reach out to us, and we're always happy and thrilled to chat with you guys and help you in whatever way we can. So until next week, take care. God bless, and we will talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank you for joining the Church Safety Guys broadcast. We hope that you found it informative, and we appreciate your feedback. Looking for ways you can help us reach more churches? Share our broadcast with your teams. Consider becoming a monthly ministry partner. Like and share our page, and join the discussion in our Facebook groups. Visit our website at churchsafetyguys.com for other great resources. Remember to keep a servant's heart, a mindset of ministry, and Semper Disciplina. Always be training. Have a blessed week.